I'm Alexa. I'm head of community at Housecall Pro.
My name is Roland. I'm one of the co-founders of Housecall Pro.
We host the Pro Talks webcast series. You can think of it as a TED Talk for people of the trades and blue-collar workers.
So when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of information coming from the federal government, from the local governments, and we wanted to make sure that we could take that information, deconstruct it, make it simple and actionable for our home service professionals to be able to make sure that the money coming from the government would hit their banks so that they could stay open and ultimately growing.
So what started off as a response has really turned into this amazing public service, and we've had the opportunity to have on so many incredible guests to our show.
We have hundreds of live viewers, and the recorded version gets viewed millions of times. Our audience consists of home service professionals and small business owners. Join us and make season 2 the best season yet.
Welcome back to another episode of Pro Talks. We are so excited to have Ria Story here with us. Ria is a motivational leadership speaker and trainer. She empowers women to increase their influence, develop their leadership, and maximize their results. And she really shares her compelling story of a transformation of a victim of abuse and trafficking as a child to a top leadership trainer and TEDx speaker. Super impressive. Go check out that video. Ria, with her husband, Mack, who we also had on the podcast, has trained thousands of leaders across the country and internationally. And Ria teaches leadership and success principles in a real, relatable, and practical way, helping you become the leader that you are destined to be. She's the author of 12 books, one that we're going to talk about today, and they're all on personal growth and leaderships, and they're all very digestible and easy to get through. They're not like crazy thing to read. But today's topic is for all pros. You don't just have to be a lady pro. It's essential to success as a business owner. So Ria is going to be sharing her prime time methodology for effective planning with us today, which I'm so excited to talk about. Ria gifted me a book, and I've gotten a bit through it. I've kind of gotten to this part here. So I'm really excited to dive deeper into it. What I've read so far is extremely actionable, and we're going to talk about it today. So before we dive in, we're going to do our Lighten Greenberg round to get to know Ria in 1 minute or less. So I'm going to start us off. Ria, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in rural Alabama.
Ooh, what's your proudest accomplishment so far?
My proudest accomplishment, I think, is really overcoming the fear and the shame that I had about my past. And, really that was my biggest challenge, was overcoming myself. So sometimes it's better when we get out of our own way.
And on a lighter note, dogs or cats?
Oh, neither.
Nope. No pets. No pets.
No pets. No pets. No pets.
That's a great answer.
Favorite Ben and Jerry's ice cream?
I'm not familiar with Ben and Jerry's, but all ice cream, best flavor ever is French vanilla. So I hope they have French vanilla. I've never met an ice cream flavor I don't like, though, to be honest.
They have some weird ones these days. One outdoor activity that you would never do, couldn't pay you enough money.
I think skydiving. I'd be fine once I jumped, but I don't think I could make myself step out of the plane. I just don't think
you wouldn't have a choice when you get pushed.
If you push me, I'd be okay, but I don't think I could make myself do it.
What's something a lot of people don't know about you?
Oh, a lot of people don't know that I'm addicted to cheese. I really adore cheese. It's kind of like my nemesis, I guess. I think cheese should be a food group.
Agreed. What is a skill or talent that you wish you had?
I think it'd be really cool to speak multiple languages. It's something I would aspire to do, but I've never been willing to sacrifice time.
So
which would be your first language?
Spanish.
So useful too.
Well, and I think back when I went to Guatemala in 2013, and just being there, and they obviously speak Spanish, but it was not knowing the language felt like just such a barrier. Like I wanted to talk to people more and get to know them more, and not being able to do that or having to do that with an interpreter, it was disappointing. I was like, man, I probably could have gotten more from the experience and certainly been able to give them more if we hadn't had that language barrier. So yeah, that would I guess that's just the one that sticks out. First one.
Maybe before the next time you have a trip back to Guatemala, you'll dedicate some time to learning at least some key phrases. Like I wonder what effective planning is in Spanish. I should know that. You should know that.
To me, it's one of those things that it would be great or it would be good. It would be nice. But is it like the best use of my time to spend a lot of, and we'll talk a lot about that. So I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Ooh, I like the lead in. Okay, Roland, want to do your last one?
Ooh, okay. Well, what did you want to be as a kid growing up?
Oh, everything. I had a period where I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be a horse trainer. I had a period where I wanted to be Stephen King and write, fiction books. And I probably wanted to be a unicorn at some point. It was just like everything. I had a lot of aspirations.
And finally, if you could have a billboard on anything or with anything on it, what would it be?
I would put my favorite slogan, which is belief drives behavior and potential is realized one choice at a time.
Ooh, that's a great saying. I can tell you've said that one a couple times before.
To me, it's just, we don't always think about just the power of our choices compounded over time. And we limit our potential when we think of, there again, we're kind of getting ahead of our topic for today. But, we set great big goals and it's fun and it sounds good and it's exciting, but really the power of achieving those goals or our potential is one choice at a time. It's the daily discipline, the daily little choices. And we forget that. It's just so powerful that just about anything we want to accomplish, whether it's writing a book or learning a new language or starting our own business, right? It's the daily work.
Yeah, that you put in. So Bria, can you tell us and all of our listeners here, can you share your journey with us so far and what makes you so passionate about all the things that you're going to be teaching and that you have taught and that you've written about when it comes to success in leadership?
Yeah, I get excited about it and I get passionate about it because to me, these tools and these principles, we don't really talk about them. We don't teach them. We go, in our society, we put a lot of emphasis on competency, which is skills and, abilities. We go to school, we learn to read and write and do math. And that's good stuff. I'm not saying we don't need that. We do. That's very important. But what's more important is how we do what we do, right? Our character or who we are determines much of our success in life. It determines our influence with other people. But we don't talk about these things. We don't really sit down and teach them or talk about them. I got 3 college degrees in management and leadership, and not one course ever said or taught me how to influence people. Like that's a life skill. Like every single one of us want to influence more people, right? Because when we have more influence, life gets better. We get more options. We get more opportunities. And it was not, influencing people wasn't a natural strength for me. And so when I figured out I could develop that as a skill, right? Then it was like the light bulb just came on and it was like, man, maybe I'm not a born communicator, but I can learn to listen better. I can develop that skills. It's funny. We have a lot of classes and courses on reading and writing, and but have you ever taken a class on better listening? Right?
No,
we don't do it, and yet it's such a powerful part of communication and relationships, influence. It's such a powerful skill when we want to influence the people that work for us or with us or around us or our spouses. Our friends, our coworkers, even, it's such a interpersonal skill. So I kind of got off on a tangent, but I do get excited about it because when I discovered that these skills that could help us improve our life at home, at work, personally and professionally, it's something that we could learn, right? It's not like you're either good at it or you're not. It's something we can get better at. And so I'm like, well, the world needs to know we can get better at this.
And you make it more widely accessible to different types of people. And you have, like I said in the beginning, so many different books and journals on topics like how to have more influence, on leadership, on different tools of success. But today, I'm really excited to talk about this book, Prime Time, The Power of Effective Planning, because it is so useful for all of our pros who are running their business, they're running their household, and they're probably driving themselves and their spouses crazy. So can you please share your thoughts on this lofty idea of time management and kind of debunk it and what it truly means?
The thing about it's a kind of a cliche, right? Time management, but we really can't manage time. I mean, you can't save it. You can't buy more of it if you run out of it. You can't keep it. You can only spend it, or you can invest it, right? And what you do with it really determines your return on the investment. And, a lot of times, I've been to courses or classes that talk about how to manage time better, how to be more, productive. It's not about managing time, right? It's about managing ourselves within the time that we've got. We've all got the same, 24 hours in a day. It's what do we do with it? And unfortunately, a lot of us in our culture, especially a lot of entrepreneurs, we're overstressed and overcommitted and overscheduled. And then you hear of a work-life balance, but where's the life, right? Where's the life? Work-life balance assumes that there's life at some point, but you're so tired by the time you get a day off and you spend all your day, catching up on the chores that you didn't get to do while you're working or running your business, and you're too tired to enjoy it. And then you get to the end of the day and you didn't exercise, or you didn't have time to just rest. And then you get burned out and overstressed. And, a lot of our health problems come from not managing ourselves well within our responsibilities. So it's not really about managing time. It's not about prioritizing what we have to do, but really prioritizing what's most important to us, and not just managing our to-do list, right? Not just planning priorities, but prioritizing our planning.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
And for our pros, you talk about this concept called living the whirlwind life. And oftentimes our pros, like I said, they're really busy business owners, they're running a family, and they may be running so fast that they don't know that they are actually experiencing symptoms of this. Can you run us through what some of those symptoms are and why this is so essential to regain control of your life as a business owner?
Yeah, a lot of times, and let me just say, I probably work twice as many hours now as an entrepreneur than I did working at a regular job, right? At a regular job, you had hours kind of loosely that you were there, and maybe they were long hours, but at some point you went home at the end of the day. But I'm much more balanced and in harmony than I ever was back then, because what I'm doing is much more in alignment with my values. And I'll get to that in a minute. The symptoms of a whirlwind life, you do feel overstressed and overcommitted and overscheduled, and you realize you miss an appointment because you forgot to put it on your calendar, or you're committed to exercise and you get to the gym and realize you didn't bring your shoes, and so it's like you're always running on to the next thing. You never have time for anything else, or margin, I like to say. You never have the time or the energy for flexibility or spontaneity, because you are so stretched, so thin, that there's always more demands on your time. And let me just say, it's not going to be an overnight fix, because it really does take a lot of reflection or self-awareness to think about what am I saying yes to that I need to let go of. John Maxwell says, what we say yes to shapes our life. I absolutely believe that. But what shapes our legacy is what we say no to. Because when we find ourselves overcommitted, we're living a whirlwind life, we've got to learn to say no to something, because we cannot say yes to everything. We want to sometimes. And I think a lot of business owners struggle with that. A lot of people do. it's great to take on a lot and accomplish a lot, but what happens is we cannot do the great things because we're too busy or too stretched between just the good things.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we're going to dive into what things should you be saying no to, or how do you develop a framework for thinking about it. But before we do that, in your book, you have an exercise called the Abundant Life Exercise. Can you tell us a little bit, like, what is it? What's the theory kind of behind it? And how is it related to the primetime method that we're going to dive into here in a second?
Yeah. I think the first place is just knowing where you're at relative to where you want to be. So I call it the Abundant Life Exercise because I think life should be, abundant, right? I should have enough of it, enjoy it. I should have energy to enjoy it. So there are 4 dimensions of life, right? There's our physical dimension, which is our physical body, our physical health, our environment that we're around. There's the mental dimension or emotional dimension, which is our mind, our development, our personal growth. There is the relationship dimension or social dimension, which is relationships with other people. And then there's our values dimension, or our spiritual or heart dimension, if you want to call it that, where we really determine what's most important to us, right? And that's going to be different for everyone. So it's the Abundant Life Assessment just runs you through 10 questions in each of those dimensions. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just a you and you document that you sit down and go on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Am I where I want to be in this dimension? So an example of that would be, do I get enough sleep every night? On a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being no, I don't get near the amount of sleep. I'm pretty okay with I get enough sleep. Maybe that's a 3. 5 is I get enough sleep every night and I feel refreshed. So again, no right or wrong answers there, but just a tool to help you kind of reflect, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And where are you now, maybe?
Probably helps you track your progress too, So as you start going down this, what is your starting point? And then over time, like, are they changing or are they not? And how do you adjust from there?
Absolutely. Life is kind of like a wheel, right? And every dimension has to be more or less in balance over time, because like a wheel doesn't roll if it's out of balance. It doesn't roll smoothly. Our life is kind of like that. You can get away with out of balance for a little while, but sooner or later it's going to catch up to you. So you can be out of balance short term, like the new parents who aren't getting enough sleep at night, right? That's a short term out of balance, but it's in harmony with what they want to do, and it will resolve over time. So you can get away with that. But if you go without enough sleep forever, then sooner or later your health is going to pay.
Right.
I want to ask our pros. I want to ask our pros in the Facebook group how many, if they think they get enough sleep, and I'm going to bet all of them say no, and they're going to have a 1 on the Abundant Life Exercise for sleep.
That's a great poll. Actually, we should totally post that. I'm curious to see how many hours.
Like how many hours of sleep? Just, I think home service business owners, especially, because you have to be up at the crack of dawn, you have to get on the road, get to your jobs, and then you have to be the last one in the office wrapping things up. But they still manage to show up with a smile on their face. I think it's very admirable. And most people who own business are able to do that. So we have gone through the 4 types of categories. So can we talk about now what PRIME stands for? What does each block of PRIME stand for? Because this will help all of the pros kind of visualize this in their head when they start to categorize their own things.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I'm a big fan of acronyms because it helps me remember things. So PRIME is just an acronym. So the first block and the first letter, P, stands for your power block. So that's really where you want more of your time spent. Activities or time spent in this block would be things like actually producing something, right? Something that's in line with your values. For example, one of my values is adding value to people writing books. So when I'm sitting down writing a book or a blog, that's in my power block. You're producing something, you're increasing your capacity to produce something, you're really just fully in alignment with who you are. Everything's clicking, you're accomplishing what's most important relative to your goals. And again, that might be different for everyone. the letter R, we need a restorative block, and that's really where we do have time for renewal, or restoration, recreation, because that's the thing that fills our tank back up, right? When we spend our energy in so many different ways, we've got to fill that back up at some point, because we can't run on empty forever. And that's going to give us more energy and more capacity to do more of the activities in our power block. Together, we should ideally think of it as a great goal would be 80% of our time spent in these two blocks, right? I'm either resting and recharging and renewing myself so that I can spend more time in that, block, or I'm in that block and I'm actually doing what I was best.
For those keeping track, so is 80% of 24 hours, and is the reason why there's so much restorative in there is because a lot of it's sleep? And do you count that within that bucket or no?
I would, absolutely. And here's the thing. So let's assume you need 8 hours of sleep. I know some people need a little less, some people need a little more, but let's go with 8. 8 hours would be in your restorative block. But if you need 8 hours of sleep and you sleep 12 hours, for example, you're not spending time in the restorative block anymore, because you only needed 8. And so any other time than really what you needed is excess, right? So an example of this, we all need downtime. We absolutely need time to recharge. But maybe that's an hour of Netflix, on Saturday night. If you spent 15 hours on Saturday binge watching a show, there is nothing wrong with that. But if you're feeling overstressed and overcommitted and overscheduled because you don't have enough time, but then you're escaping what's going on Monday through Friday by binge watching Netflix on Saturday, you're just going to assure that you're going to be doing that next week, right? You're not doing anything to help you get out of that whirlwind. So, and anything over what you actually really need to recharge or be in that restorative block would go into the E block, and we weren't quite there yet, but that's excessive block, expendable block. It's where activities in this block are really just wasteful. And there again, we do need some downtime, absolutely. It's just sometimes we try to escape whatever is going on in life, and so we use that as a coping mechanism, and then we find that we're not able to get out of whatever's driving us away.
So what's I in prime?
I stands for the incongruous block. And activities or time in this block are really, they're good things, but they're maybe not great things. And I talked about, learning another language is always something cool I'd like to do, but it's not maybe the highest and best use of my time, right? It's a good thing, but is it really the best use of my time, talents, and abilities relative to what I want to accomplish?
So it's out of place, but
right.
Sometimes necessary, but sometimes unnecessary.
Sometimes necessary, sometimes unnecessary. And there again, we are the only ones who can define that. Other people's priorities would also fall in this block. So your neighbor needs you to help him move. And you were like, you know what, that's a good thing, right? I want to help the neighbor move. But maybe I don't have time, because if I spend my time helping him move, then I spend 8 hours doing that. I'm too tired to do whatever else I had to do on Saturday. Or I can't take care of my business, or I'm missing out on time with my kids to help the neighbor move, right? So I've got to learn to say and evaluate that and say, you know what, this is a good thing. It's a nice thing. Maybe it's a thing that if I wasn't running a business and not getting enough sleep, I could do, but it's just not the best thing. And it's learning to say no, and then saying no because you have other things that you're saying yes to. So it's saying yes to what's most important and knowing what's most important. And then learning that, sometimes we do have to just say no, because we have to take care of us so we can continue to take care of everyone else.
So I and M are related or not related?
No, M comes obviously next, and M is marginal. And I think things in this block are examples of a crisis, where you just don't have any resources because you didn't spend enough time in your power block or your restorative block. So for example, if you don't take care of your health, right, if you don't exercise a couple times a week and eat nutritious foods, sooner or later you might have a diabetes problem, and then your blood sugar is out of control and you wind up in the hospital with low blood sugar crisis. So that would be something in the marginal block, right? It's a fire that we could have prevented and we didn't.
So is it planned or unplanned?
Unplanned. Running out of gas because I didn't have time to stop and fill the tank up with gas. This is just a small example, but we didn't spend enough time where we should have, usually in the restorative block, and so now we've got a crisis. And again, I see this a lot with our health. Obviously, it's easy to push things from the restorative block to the side because they're not immediate, right? They don't act on us. We have to act on them. We have to make sure we're protecting time for that. And it's easy to sacrifice your sleep if you're busy, right? Mm-hmm. Stay up a little later, get up a little earlier. But you do that long enough and then you end up getting sick or your immune system's compromised. So usually marginal block is something that we could have prevented. We just didn't. We pushed something to the side and now we're paying the price.
Unexpected but avoidable. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's at that level. And something that you say is that each of these 5 blocks, they all have a different return on investment. And the way that the blocks are ordered determine your success with being able to fulfill the need of each box. So can you kind of walk us through like what happens if one comes before the other? They all come falling down?
Mm-hmm. I like to think of it, the power block should go on the bottom, right? We want to spend the majority of our time here actually producing what we're made to do. Next would come the restorative block, because we need renewal to be able to do the power block. Incongruous, sometimes we might choose to do those things that are good, but maybe not great. Again, nothing wrong with that as long as we are intentional about it. We don't want to spend much time here, right? This is the crisis, but life does happen, right? Your son or daughter forgot their lunch money and you got to run some by the school or whatever, right? Those things are going to happen. We just want to, I like what you said about mostly avoidable, unexpectable, but mostly avoidable. And we don't want to spend much time at all in the E block, right? Any time here is it's just wasted. Now, again, we do need time for recharging, but anything outside of that, it just goes to waste. So if all those are stacked up on top of each other in that order, life is good. It's balanced, right? And you have the time to do the things you want. If you, for example, stack them in the wrong order, you're spending too much time in your E block and it's on the bottom, then your tower will topple. The letters won't stack up nicely. It's like I imagine a pile of blocks. And if you have the smallest block on the bottom and you start to stack all the big blocks on top, it's going to be unstable. And sooner or later, it does crash to the ground.
Yeah. So from a prioritization aspect, are you suggesting then, each thing you put on your calendar, you should categorize and put it in one of the P, R, I, M, or E bucket, and then look at that as like a percentage of the time? And then how'd you go from there to creating like the optimal schedule that's not just effective, but also fulfilling?
Yeah. I would look at your calendar, look at where you spent your time last week. And you got to be brutally honest here. And sometimes that's a little painful, right? How much time did I actually spend scrolling Instagram? And your smartphone probably has an app that will tell you, or a setting that'll tell you, how much time, right? Because when you look at first where your time went, then you are more aware and you're better equipped to go forward. So look at next week's schedule now. Ideally, in a perfect world, what's most important and where am I going to plan those things first, right? If you were to imagine this big big cardboard box, and you've got to throw everything that's going on in your life in that box. You want to pack the most important stuff first, and you want to pack the bigger stuff first. And the littler stuff will kind of just fill in the cracks. So, make sure that you are just protecting that time. The things that you have to do, obviously you have to do. The things that you need and you're on your best day would get done. I like to look at it a week a week at a time. It's a natural cycle. And a day tends to be too small. So I like to look at my week. I usually sit down on Sunday or maybe Monday morning and look at the week ahead. Where are my prime activities, my P activities, power block? That might be something like this podcast, right? For me, this is a P activity. It's a power activity. So that goes first, and I'm going to protect that, and nothing else is going to get in the way with that. And that's a boundary, and it's not negotiable. Exercise for me, I would schedule that in. I look at, well, when am I going to work on my health? When am I going to do that? And then the other things will fill in the cracks. There will be the phone calls from telemarketers, right? But if you've protected your most important things first and your priorities, the rest will fill in. The best way to start this is look at your time wasters, look at your expendable activities and your incongruous activities, right? Because those are the only two blocks that you're going to be able to minimize. You're not going to be able to put out the fire or minimize the fires right away.
Yeah.
You get there. It takes a little bit of time, but you're going to draw time from those E blocks and those I blocks and say, okay, that's where some of my time is going. I taught a class on this book, and it was so cool. I had one lady, a very successful business owner. She was a psychologist, ran her own practice. And, we got to the end of the class, and I literally had them map out their time left, what they did last week. And she had just an eye-opening. She was like, you know what, I'm spending hours a day in between appointments or on the phone or in meeting, playing. I think it wasn't Candy Crush, but it was something like that. And so she said, she just had a light bulb moment. She's like, I'm spending like so much time here. And I could be, getting my walk in instead of doing that, or I could be, anything. And so she, right there in the class, she just deleted all of those apps for games. She was like, gone. And then she sent me a message the next week. She was like, I just feel like I've got my life back because, it's not on the phone. It's not a temptation to just draw me in. So, we've got to look, and that's where I say you have to be brutally honest. It's kind of painful sometimes. And look at little ways. For example, for a while, I figured out I was spending too much time on social media, or, every time I would get a notification, I would feel the urge to check it, right? That's why we get notifications. Mm-hmm. So I just turned off the notifications. And then when I want to go there, when I'm ready to go there and it's not interrupting what I'm working on or something that's most important, there's a time and a place for it, absolutely, but it's not interrupting me when I'm in the middle of focusing on something. And so that increases my productivity.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great hack. For those of you that haven't tried that on your iPhone or Android, you can turn off notifications, especially for things that are non-urgent. So I would just say, like, for things that are urgent, like phone calls, of course you want to be notified if there's a missed phone call. But for someone that's writing a message on Facebook, none of that's going to be urgent, because if it was urgent, they'd be calling you. So just turn off those notifications. Those are like simple little things where you remove those distractions. And if you just go ahead and do that, you can recover some of those blocks that you had mentioned much quicker, really without much effort. Honestly.
I'd be curious to see what the biggest time suckers for our pros are. And you mentioned, Rhea, there's apps for that in iPhone, and I'm sure in Android. If you go into your activity, you can see how much time you're spending on certain apps. If you're spending a lot of time in Candy Crush, you're spending a lot of time in Facebook. There's probably some amendment that needs to be done there. I'm even thinking, I was playing Candy Crush last night until way too late. I have to put this into play. Do you have any other tips of action for those who want to start putting this into place?
Get good at saying no. That's the biggest one. It might be the most challenging, but truly is powerful. And let me just say, I kind of have to confess, I wasn't great at saying no. I'm still not great at it, but I've gotten better at saying no. And, this could look like anything from someone calls and says, hey, the Chamber of Commerce is having a networking meeting. And, as a business owner, you're like, well, maybe I should go. But then think back, what return on investment did you get from the last networking meeting you went, right? Is that something that I'm going just because somebody invited me? or am I going because it's really going to be a great use of my time? I'm going to get something from it. And, and it's okay to say no. It's okay. People call and ask you to volunteer for that committee, for the PTA or for the school band fundraiser, right? Only you can decide if that's a great thing or just an okay thing. And you've got to be good at saying no, because you can't build more hours in the day, right? And you got to take care of what you got to do, that's most important. But we can learn to say no to the time suckers, the time drains, the energy drains. Some relationships might need to be trimmed down, right? Mm-hmm. If there's a relationship in your life that is just negative or toxic for you, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means you maybe don't need to spend as much time with them. And get good at saying no. It's the greatest time-saving tool.
Mm-hmm. And all those things that, like you're saying, the draining relationships, the draining conversations, these extra things that you're doing for the PTA, those all bleed into how you're showing up at work, which is one of your P's, which is one of your power blocks. So that's another thing to consider as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because, our energy, right? Everything we're doing either gives us energy or it's drawing it away in some form. And, it's okay to use our energy on what's most important. I mean, that's what we want to do. But a lot of times things that are draining us, we really just haven't had the self-discipline and the commitment to say, no, this is recognizing that this is draining my energy and I'm not being able to add value to anyone or get, return on investment for my time. Mm-hmm. So I need to look at that. And that's where the life assessment starts, or looking at your week and where you're spending your time. Because, I use these principles. I couldn't have articulated it, but when I was working full time and I was going to school full time and I was working a part-time job, and, we had a teenager, so there were PTA meetings and football games. And we were volunteering in we started a nonprofit organization in our community, and I was doing all of those things at the same time. And it's not because I'm Superwoman. I just had to learn to get good at getting rid of the excess things. And so I remember having, I was at one of my classes, and one of my classmates and I we were talking about, man, working and going to school, that's tough, right? And, we were kind of commiserating about how we didn't have spare time anymore. And then in the next, 2 breaths later, she talks about what was on American Idol last week. And I was like, how do you have time for TV? Like, you clearly have some extra time there. So, and then there again, it's okay. It's just that I needed to be very careful to get rid of the excess things so that I could accomplish a lot that year. But I was able to do it.
And Ria, as we get to the close of our talk, I do want to switch gears a little bit, because I think your story is a really important one, and also one that is really relatable to a big portion of our community at Housecall. And that is, you have an incredible story of overcoming childhood trauma, and you really use it to fuel yourself, to help women become the leaders that we're capable of being. So a lot of our Lady Pros come from similar backgrounds like that, whether or not it was abuse as a child, neglect, whatever trauma that was. What advice can you share with them on how to use those past traumas to become a better person, a better business owner, a leader, a wife, a mother?
I think if I could tell anyone anything, the first thing is recognizing what happens to us is not as important as what we do about it, is what we become, is who we become because of it. The things that happen to us, trauma, adversity, whatever it is, it affects us. There's absolutely no doubt. But see, the most powerful principle is recognizing that regardless of what happens, I always have the power to decide how I'm going to respond to it. And I know that's not easy to do, mm-hmm. right? But recognizing that what happens to me, unfortunately, it's not that uncommon, but everybody goes through adversity of some kind, sooner or later. But every single one of us as humans have the freedom to choose how we respond. I can be bitter about what happens, or I can be better because of it and say, you know what, it affects me, it influences me, it changed me in some way, but I'm going to be stronger because of it. It's not an easy choice. And I know, and sometimes we got to make that choice every single day. Mm-hmm. But the more often we do it, the easier it becomes. You know, I think it's Andy Stanley who said, our feelings are terrible leaders. We're human. We have feelings and emotions. When bad things happen, that's natural to have, you know, emotional pain about it. But we don't have to respond to that. I know I'm not the only one who said or done something in the heat of the moment and gone, man, I shouldn't have said or done that, right? So, I mean, we have those emotions, but we don't have to respond to them. Sometimes we get it right. You know, the policeman might pull you over for speeding and you want to get mad, but you don't. You're respectful, right? So we can control our response. We don't always. And I'm not perfect at it. You know, the hardest person for us to influence is the one sitting in our chair, right? Leading ourselves is tough. And we've got 100% control over ourselves. And I know there are things that I should do that I haven't done. Or, you know, we all know of things that we should do and maybe haven't done or don't do and do. So that's the first thing I say, is recognizing that when you are proactive, you own what happened rather than it owning you.
Mm-hmm. When you feel those emotions start to creep in, and I'm really asking for anyone who experiences anger, frustration in the workplace, especially as a leader, and you have employees looking at you, you have your kids looking at you, what actions do you take in that moment to take yourself out of that place and kind of like reset yourself?
Literally, you know, I think it's Stephen Covey who uses the analogy of a pause button. Right? If I could think of a TV remote and someone wants to push the buttons and change my emotional channel, I'm just not going to give them the remote. I'm just going to take that remote and I'm going to say, nope, I'm going to push my pause button, pause and think about how I would respond to this. Now, sometimes that means literally just walking away, right? If I'm not ready yet to choose the best response, maybe I need to just not respond right now. You know, some people call it counting to 10, you know, taking a step back. Maybe it's leaving, getting out of the office for a few hours. If you literally aren't ready to choose that best response, don't do anything yet. For me, that works really well because then I have time to think it through and it's not in the emotion of the moment. That's not always possible to do. Sometimes you cannot get out of the situation, but if you can, really use your literal pause button. Stop and tell yourself, you know what, stop, pause, let me think this through if I can. What's the best response? And if I can't do that, maybe just no response yet. You're not always going to get it right. I don't. I still don't. And my husband, Mack, and I teach these principles and all the time, and we write about them and we talk about them, we're passionate about them, and we still get them wrong, right? I won't go into that story, but but we do, you know, we're human and we're going to make mistakes. But see, every time we are able to push that pause button and choose a better response, we increase our influence with positive people. From a practical standpoint, I think of little things that help me be more proactive or help me reset my emotional energy. Music is a big way for a lot of people. You know, you've ever been having a bad day, just a really crummy day, and you start driving somewhere and your favorite song comes on and you start to feel a little bit better, right? Because what happens is you changed the thoughts that you were thinking, and which changes how you're feeling, which changes what you do, and that changes the results that you get. So it starts with, you know, switching our thoughts and taking control over that. Learning to look at the situation from a different perspective or a bigger perspective sometimes.
Yeah. And that one, I like to think like, how is this thing that's happening to me? How am I going to think about it tomorrow and a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and 10 years from now? How am I going to think about this moment? And from there, you can really like look in reverse back at it and say, oh, you know what, this is just, I'm never going to remember this, you know, and like, then, you know, in the moment, it might be the biggest deal, but in reality, you're never going to remember it anyways. And it helps you put those things in a context, and is another good kind of mind hack to work yourself through there, especially when you push the pause button. Because like you said, it'll allow you to react appropriately, not just out of just the sheer emotion of it, you know, because it's sometimes hard to get there.
It might save you a bad review, a bad interaction with a customer who actually you would love to keep, with an employee who might quit because of your explosion. There are, like you said, there are consequences when that does happen. So we need to press your literal pause button.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So Ria, what words of encouragement do you have for those pros of ours that might feel overwhelmed and they're starting to prioritize the events in their life? So they're like, okay, now I got to do this, but oh my gosh, like how can I start? I'm feeling this like anxiety, this sense of overwhelmness. Like what kind of encouragement or maybe some tips do you give them to kind of get going on this?
Start small. That's the biggest thing. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed, especially when you are already stressed, right? I mean, there's one more thing I want to do. It's not sitting down with my planner and looking what I did last week. So start small, right? If we can commit to just small changes over time, that really builds up. Rome wasn't built in a day, as the saying goes. But here's the thing. I mentioned earlier about the billboard, what saying would I put on the billboard, right? Our belief drives our behavior, but it also works the other way. Our behavior influences our belief. So number one, start small, believe it's possible, believe that life can be better, right? You've got to believe it. Not necessarily believing is achieving, but if you don't believe it, you're not going to achieve it. Let me assure you, right? So think of how good things can be and think of how they can be better, but just choose one little area. Maybe it's starting with turning off those Instagram notifications or Facebook notifications. Maybe it's deleting Candy Crush, right? And, you know, just choose one small thing that you can do. Because here's the thing, when we choose something small and we make a commitment to ourselves to do it and we keep it, that builds up our mind muscle, right? It builds up our integrity with ourselves and saying, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to follow through. When we make a commitment to ourselves and we don't keep it, that takes, it takes away from our integrity with ourselves. You are the most important person you talk to, right? So it's important to not just keep commitments we make to other people, to our customers and our clients, we have to keep the commitments we make to ourselves. And the best way to do that is to start really small, because it's easy to do that. Tiny, get microscopic with it if you need to. Don't start off by saying, well, gosh, I'm only getting 5.5 hours sleep. Let me sleep 8 hours a night next week. Just see if you can commit to going to bed 5 minutes earlier, right? Or 15. How small can you make it? You'd much rather start small and overachieve your goal for yourself than set it too big and fail.
That's good advice.
Really good advice. And Ria, where can our pros find more of you, more of your work, and the resources that you and Mack make?
Yeah, so you can find us online. Our websites, mine is riastory.com. You can find Mack on bluecollarleadership.com. We're also on social media, so look for either one of us, Mack Story or Ria Story. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So, just connect with us and, let us know the successes that you have.
Yeah, and if you guys would like to read more about it, you can go actually get the book. So Prime Time. And then what's really handy about it too is it has like the worksheets built into it. So as you're going through it, you can kind of like fill things out. So it's like part book, part worksheet through there as well. So as you're trying to make those small incremental steps, there you go. Then you can go in and you can actually self-assess and then assess later down the road. So super helpful, definitely for our pros that are always busy, always trying to figure out what to prioritize and are managing so many things in their entrepreneurial lives. This is a really great framework to just think through as you're trying to prioritize those things in your schedule.
Definitely. And I think that's why we have guests like Ria on to talk about things that maybe aren't so trade focused, because if you don't have your schedule under control and if you are spending your time in these buckets that you shouldn't be, your business isn't going to be under control. It's not just about marketing. It's not just about the technical skills. It's about you as a person, your leadership skills, and how you're prioritizing your time at the end of the day, because you can't manage or get more of it, which is my biggest learn. And I want to let you guys know I'm on level 1500 of Candy Crush, and I might delete it off my phone after our conversation. I feel ashamed but proud.
There again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just figuring out, is this going to help me move in the direction that I want to go? And only you can decide that.
Absolutely.
That's sage advice. Thank you again so much for spending time with us, our pros, Ria. So grateful to have you on, and we will catch all of you guys on the next episode.
All right. Bye, everyone. Bye, Ria. Thank you so much. I'll be talking to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Look forward to seeing you next week. For more information, go to housecallpro.com/pro talks.